When my wife and I finally welcomed our baby girl into the world, I thought life couldn't possibly get any better. We'd been through a long, exhausting pregnancy, doctor visits, sleepless nights, anxious waiting, all leading to the moment when that tiny cry filled the hospital room. I remember looking at my wife, exhausted but glowing, and feeling like the luckiest man alive. After years of serving as county sheriff, handling emergencies, chasing down criminals, and seeing the worst sides of people, this was pure peace. We'd recently moved into a quiet suburban neighborhood, a place that was supposed to be calm and family-oriented, perfect for raising a newborn. The houses were tidy, the lawns were manicured, and the homeowners association ran everything like a well-oiled machine. Or so we thought. From the very first day, there was one neighbor who made our lives a living nightmare, Karen. You know the type. The kind who believes she's the neighborhood queen, self-appointed ruler of all driveways, lawns, and sidewalks. She had short, spiky blonde hair, oversized sunglasses, and a tone that made every conversation feel like a courtroom hearing. When my wife Sarah and I moved in, Karen was the first to greet us, and by greet, I mean she marched over, clipboard in hand, and immediately began listing all the HOA rules we needed to know. She didn't even congratulate us on the baby. Instead, she scolded us about the moving truck blocking part of the sidewalk. Sidewalks must remain clear at all times, she said, pointing like she was citing law. HOA Policy Section 4B, Paragraph 6. Sarah smiled politely, trying not to roll her eyes. We'll move it as soon as the movers finish unloading. Shouldn't take long. Karen huffed. It better not. We keep this neighborhood looking perfect for a reason. We don't want it turning into, well, you know. That was our first red flag. I didn't say anything then. I wanted to start fresh, stay civil, and avoid unnecessary drama. But deep down, I had that gut feeling every cop gets when something's off. Over the next few weeks, Karen seemed to make it her personal mission to monitor our every move. She complained about our trash cans being too close to the street, about Sarah's flower pots being the wrong color, and even about the noise of our newborn crying at night. She would leave notes, actual printed letters, taped to our door that said things like, HOA expects compliance with community peace standards. Babies or not. I thought it was ridiculous, but Sarah was still recovering from childbirth and trying to adjust to motherhood. I didn't want to stress her out more than she already was, so I took care of most of it quietly. Then, one morning, things escalated in the most unbelievable way. Sarah had decided to take our baby for a walk around the neighborhood. It was a warm, sunny morning, the kind where the breeze carries the scent of freshly cut grass. She put our little girl, Emma, in her stroller and went for a peaceful stroll, or at least, that's what it was supposed to be. About 20 minutes later, I got a phone call. I was in my home office reviewing case files when my phone buzzed. It was Sarah. Her voice was trembling. John, she took her. Karen she just took Emma. My heart nearly stopped. What? What do you mean she took her? She said I was unfit to walk with a newborn in this heat. I told her it wasn't that hot, that Emma was fine. But she started shouting about HOA safety rules, and before I could react, she unbuckled the stroller and picked up Emma. I froze. For a moment, it didn't even feel real. My mind went blank, then exploded with adrenaline. I didn't even grab my badge or gun, just bolted out the door. When I got to the end of the street, I saw Sarah standing near the sidewalk, tears streaming down her face. Her arms were shaking, empty where Emma should have been. And about 30 feet away, there she was, Karen, holding my baby in her arms like she owned her, standing on her porch with a smug expression. I could feel the blood rushing to my head. Every instinct I had as a father and as a sheriff kicked in at once. Karen, I shouted, storming toward her. Give me my daughter. Now. Karen didn't even flinch. You need to calm down, John. I'm protecting this child. Your wife was being careless, walking around with a newborn in this heat. It's against community safety guidelines. I stopped in disbelief. Are you out of your mind? Those aren't laws. You have no right to touch my baby. She looked down at Emma, rocking her gently, as if she were the hero in some twisted drama. I'm doing what any responsible community leader would do. You people don't seem to understand how fragile infants are. I'm reporting both of you to the HOA and possibly Child Protective Services. My fists clenched. I could feel my voice rising, but I kept my composure just enough to avoid making the situation worse. Sarah ran to my side, sobbing, reaching out helplessly. "Karen, please just give her back," she cried. "She's our daughter. Please." Karen held up a finger, silencing her like some kind of authority figure. "You'll get her back when I'm satisfied that she's safe. Until then, maybe you two should reflect on what kind of parents you're being." That was the final straw. I reached for my wallet, flipped it open, and held up my sheriff's badge. The gold star caught the sunlight. Karen blinked, confused for a second, until she realized what she was looking at. "Karen," I said in a low, commanding voice, "you're holding a sheriff's child. You've just committed child abduction." Her smug smile finally began to fade. For a moment, silence filled the entire street. The world seemed to stop. The only sounds were the faint rustle of leaves and the gentle coo of baby Emma in Karen's arms. Karen's confident posture wavered, but only slightly. I could tell she was trying to hold on to whatever authority she thought she had left. You're the sheriff?" she stammered, glancing between the badge and my face. I stepped closer, every muscle tense. "That's right. County Sheriff John Miller. And you just kidnapped an infant." Her jaw dropped. "Kidnapped? That's ridiculous. I was protecting her. You can't just accuse me of a crime for being a concerned neighbor." I kept my tone firm but even. "Karen, listen carefully. You forcibly removed a baby from her mother without consent. That is abduction. You can try to dress it up however you want, but the law doesn't care what you meant. It cares what you did." Sarah was trembling beside me, her hands pressed against her mouth. "John, please, just get her back," she whispered, tears streaking down her cheeks. "Don't worry," I said, stepping forward slowly. "I've got this." Karen took a hesitant step back, still holding Emma tightly. "You're scaring me," she said, her voice turning defensive. "You're making a scene. I'll call the HOA." "You call whoever you like," I interrupted sharply. "But you're putting that baby down. Right now." For a second, I thought she might finally comply. Her eyes darted nervously, weighing her odds. But then she doubled down. "If you were a real officer," she snapped, "you'd know this is a civil matter, not criminal. The HOA has authority over neighborhood safety, and your wife endangered her child by walking around without a sunshade or hat. It's negligence." That did it. I took one final step forward, lowered my voice, and spoke like I would to a suspect on the edge. "Karen, you have exactly 5 seconds to hand her over before I call this in as a child abduction in progress. You really want half the county's patrol cars showing up on your lawn?" Her face paled. Her eyes flicked to the neighbors who were now peeking out from their porches and windows. The entire street was watching the drama unfold. Finally, with shaking hands, Karen slowly extended the baby toward Sarah. "There," she muttered, "take her. But don't think this is over. I'm reporting you both for unsafe parenting." Sarah rushed forward and scooped Emma into her arms, clutching her like she'd never let go again. She turned her back on Karen, shielding the baby with her body, sobbing in relief. I exhaled, my pulse still hammering in my chest. "Karen," I said, "you need to go inside. Right now. I'll be in touch with you later, officially." She glared at me. "Oh, I'll be contacting the HOA president first. You think that badge means you can do whatever you want? You're no better than anyone else here." Then she stormed into her house, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. That evening, after things calmed down, I sat with Sarah on the couch. She was still shaken, gently rocking Emma back and forth. The baby was fine, thankfully, but the emotional damage was real. "I can't believe she did that," Sarah said softly. "I didn't even think someone could be that deranged." I rubbed my temples. She's the kind of person who hides behind rules and uses them to control people. HOA or not, she crossed the line today. I looked at my phone. I'd already logged a preliminary report, because even though it was personal, I had to document it properly. Being sheriff meant I couldn't bend the law, even when it involved my own family. I called one of my deputies, Officer Reed, and explained the situation. "You're kidding," he said, disbelief in his tone. "She actually took the baby?" Yeah. Claimed it was an HOA safety issue. Reed let out a low whistle. That's insane. You want me to run it as a formal charge? Not yet, I replied. I'll give her a chance to come clean. But if she pushes it, we'll move forward. The next morning before sunrise, I was already up reviewing body cam and neighborhood camera footage from the area. We had security cameras on our house and several of the neighbors' homes had doorbell cams. I collected copies. Every single angle showed the same thing. Sarah peacefully walking with Emma, Karen marching up, arguing, and then physically taking the baby. It was all crystal clear. Around 10 a.m., Karen returned, strutting up our driveway like she hadn't just committed one of the worst acts imaginable. She had a folder in hand and that same arrogant look plastered on her face. John, she said in a sickly sweet voice, I just wanted to clear things up. I spoke with the HOA board this morning, and they agreed I was within my rights to ensure the child's safety. You really shouldn't take things so personally. I stood up from my porch chair slowly. Karen, you're unbelievable. You think the HOA gives you the authority to take a child from her mother? It's all about community safety, she said proudly. I even printed the section for you. She opened her folder and began flipping through typed pages, as if she was some kind of lawyer. See here? It states that all residents must ensure that minors are properly supervised and shielded from environmental risks, sun exposure, heat, noise pollution, things like that. I was just enforcing that. I took the paper from her and skimmed it. Karen, this isn't a legal document. This is a newsletter. The HOA can fine people for leaving trash bins out too long. They can't override state law or federal child protection statutes. Her smile faltered. You're exaggerating. I did nothing wrong. I handed the papers back. You crossed a line, Karen. And whether you want to admit it or not, there are consequences. You can either come down to the station voluntarily and give your statement, or I can send an officer to bring you in. Her eyes widened. You wouldn't dare. I met her gaze evenly. Try me. She stood there for a long moment, her mouth opening and closing, trying to think of a comeback. Finally, she just huffed, turned on her heel, and marched off again. Sarah came outside a few minutes later, holding Emma. What did she want this time? Damage control, I said. She thinks the HOA rules put her above the law. Sarah sighed. I just want to feel safe here. Every time I step outside, I feel like she's watching me. I looked out over the neighborhood, the rows of perfect lawns and pristine mailboxes hiding the tension beneath. Don't worry, I said quietly. I'll make sure she doesn't come near you or Emma again. But deep down, I knew Karen wasn't the type to back down easily. She was about to learn what happens when someone tries to challenge the law and a father protecting his family. The following day started off quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that feels like the calm before a storm. Sarah and I tried to pretend everything was normal, but there was tension in the air. She barely slept that night, waking up every hour to check on Emma in her crib. I stayed up late too, sitting by the living room window, keeping an eye on the street. I wasn't paranoid, I was cautious. After years in law enforcement, I'd learned that people like Karen rarely stop at one bad decision. By noon, my instincts were proven right. A black SUV pulled up in front of our house. Two individuals stepped out, one holding a clipboard and the other carrying a camera. Their badges weren't police, they were from Child Protective Services. I sighed, already knowing who was behind this. Sarah, startled, came to the door as I stepped outside to meet them. The woman in front, a social worker named Ms. Jensen, gave a polite but wary smile. Mr. and Mrs. Miller? We received an anonymous report about possible child endangerment involving your infant daughter. Sarah gasped. What? That's insane. I nodded calmly. Let me guess, the complaint mentioned walking a newborn outside without proper sun protection? Miss Jensen's eyebrows raised slightly. Yes, actually. That was one of the listed concerns. I exhaled slowly. That would be from our neighbor, Karen. She's the one who physically took our child 2 days ago. The second CPS worker, a man with a camera, looked up sharply. Took your child. I pulled out my phone and played the doorbell footage, showing Karen snatching Emma from the stroller. The audio was crystal clear, her shouting about HOA rules, Sarah begging her to stop. Miss Jensen's eyes widened. Oh my, this changes everything. I nodded. I'm also the county sheriff. This report was filed out of retaliation. I've already documented it as part of an open investigation. She quickly lowered her clipboard. Understood, Sheriff Miller. I'm so sorry for the intrusion. We'll note this as a false report and close it immediately. Thank you, I said, keeping my tone professional. I appreciate your time. And please note in your file that we have video evidence and witnesses. They apologized again, then left. Sarah collapsed onto the couch once they were gone, clutching Emma close. She called CPS on us, she whispered, shaking her head. That woman has no limit. No, I said, jaw tightening. She doesn't. But now, she's stepped into my world, and she's not walking away from this one. Later that afternoon, I made a few calls to finalize the case report. I filed the footage, Sarah's statement, and witness accounts from 2 neighbors who'd seen what happened. Then I sent it all to the district attorney's office. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a text from DA Karen Wallace, a longtime friend. Got your report. Watched the video. That woman's in deep trouble. Want me to move forward with a warrant? I texted back. Do it by the book. No shortcuts. She's used to bullying people. Time she learned the law isn't her toy. The next morning, as the sun was coming up, I heard police radios crackling in the distance. Within minutes, 2 marked patrol units rolled down our street. I stepped outside to meet them, coffee in hand. Officer Reed got out of the first car. Morning, Sheriff. We've got the signed warrant. Good, I said. Let's go have a chat with Ms. HOA Queen. Karen's house was just a few doors down. Her manicured yard looked spotless, the hedges perfectly trimmed, like everything else about her, fake perfection hiding real ugliness. When we knocked, she opened the door wearing her signature smug grin. Oh, Sheriff, she said sweetly. I was just about to file a noise complaint about your wife's crying baby. Can we discuss it, Civ? Reed interrupted her by holding up the warrant. Karen Wilson, you're under investigation for filing a false child endangerment report, harassment, and unlawful interference with custody. Her smile dropped like a stone. What? This is insane. You can't be serious. I folded my arms. I'm very serious. You crossed the line when you touched my child. Then you made it worse by lying to authorities. That's not just bad manners, it's a crime. Karen's face turned bright red. I was protecting that baby. Everyone in the neighborhood knows how irresponsible your wife is. She lets that infant cry at all hours and walks her around like a parade float. Reed shook his head. You're not helping your case. I have authority. I'm on the HOA board, she yelled. Not the kind of authority that lets you kidnap a baby, I said evenly. Put your hands behind your back. Her eyes went wide. You're arresting me? For what? For the video evidence that shows you taking an infant without consent, threatening the mother, and then filing a retaliatory false report to CPS, I replied. That's multiple offenses. She started screaming. Not words, just noise. The kind of tantrum you'd expect from a toddler, not a grown woman. Neighbors started gathering again, phones in hand, recording everything. I'll sue you, she shouted. I'll sue the entire department. You can't treat me like this in my own neighborhood. I leaned close and said quietly, You should have thought about that before you laid a hand on my daughter. Reed read her rights as she was handcuffed. Her voice grew hoarse from yelling, but I'd heard enough. By evening, the story had spread across the entire community. Every neighbor who had once tolerated Karen's self-importance was suddenly silent, and for once, the street felt peaceful. Sarah watched the sunset from the porch, Emma asleep in her arms. Do you think she'll actually go to jail? She asked softly. She'll face charges, I said. Whether she gets time or probation depends on the DA. But she's finished with the HOA for sure. Sarah exhaled deeply. I just want her gone. She will be, I assured her. People like her always think rules put them above the law, until the law shows up. I sat beside her and gently brushed Emma's tiny hand. You know, I said quietly, I've dealt with criminals for years, but I've never seen anyone as self-righteous as that woman. Sarah gave a faint smile. Maybe now she'll learn the difference between helping and harming. Maybe, I said, though deep down I knew Karen wasn't done yet. Women like her don't vanish quietly. They fight until they're forced to face reality. And in her case, that reality was about to come from the courtroom. Karen's arrest made the local news within 24 hours. It wasn't every day that someone in an HOA neighborhood got handcuffed for trying to play community sheriff. The story spread quickly. Neighbors gossiping on group chats, posts popping up on Facebook, and a few even cheering quietly from their driveways. But Karen? She doubled down. From her holding cell, she called a lawyer, one of those combative, self-righteous attorneys who thought intimidation could erase evidence. Within a day, she'd made bail, and by the next morning, she was back in the neighborhood as if nothing had happened. She strutted down the street in oversized sunglasses, pretending not to notice the stares. Her voice carried across the cul-de-sac. "This is all a misunderstanding. I'll be exonerated soon enough." I watched from the porch, coffee in hand. Sarah was inside feeding Emma, finally beginning to relax. I didn't want her worrying anymore, so I kept my expression calm. But deep inside, I knew Karen was only digging herself a deeper hole. A week later, the court date arrived. The courthouse was buzzing with reporters, neighbors, and even members of the HOA board who had been encouraged to attend. The judge assigned to the case, Judge Myers, was known for his patience, but also for his zero-tolerance attitude toward arrogance. Karen walked in wearing a neat blazer and pearls, trying to look like a respectable community volunteer. Her lawyer followed, carrying a thick binder labeled HOA regulations. I had to fight the urge to laugh. Sarah sat beside me, holding my hand tightly. We weren't there for revenge. We just wanted accountability. When the judge called the session to order, Karen's lawyer immediately launched into a speech. "Your Honor, my client acted solely out of concern for the welfare of the child. The Millers were negligent in exposing their newborn to outdoor heat, and Ms. Wilson, as a responsible citizen, intervened to protect the infant's well-being. The HOA's safety policies support her actions." Judge Myers raised a hand. "Counselor, stop." The lawyer blinked. "Excuse me." "Stop," the judge repeated, voice firm. "Did you just say your client physically removed a baby from her mother without consent?" "Well, yes, but..." "That's kidnapping," the judge said flatly. "I don't care if it's 70 degrees or 700. No one, and I mean no one, has the right to take another person's child. Continue digging this hole, and I'll start considering contempt charges." The room went silent. Karen's smug expression faltered, but she quickly tried to recover. "Your Honor, I was just trying to help." Judge Myers leaned forward. "You don't help by snatching a baby. You call for assistance. You call 911. What you did was reckless, unlawful, and dangerous. And filing a false report with Child Protective Services afterward? That's malicious." The lawyer tried to pivot. "With respect, Your Honor, the HOA policies do allow members to." "HOA policies," the judge interrupted again, "are not the law. They cannot and will not override state or federal law. What your client did wasn't community service. It was vigilantism." Karen's face flushed bright red. "But she was walking that baby in the sun," she blurted out, voice trembling. "There was no hat, no umbrella. It was irresponsible. I was protecting her. I couldn't help it." I stood up. "Your Honor, may I speak?" The judge nodded. "Karen Wilson isn't some concerned neighbor," I said calmly. "She's been harassing my wife since the day we moved in. She used the HOA as a weapon to control people. My wife was peacefully walking with our newborn. There was no danger, no neglect. Ms. Wilson escalated, forcibly took my child, and later filed a false report. We have it all on camera." I handed the bailiff the USB drive with the footage. The video played on the courtroom screen. Karen's shrill voice, Sarah's panicked cries, and the unmistakable image of Karen lifting Emma out of her stroller. By the time the clip ended, the room was dead silent. Even her lawyer looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Judge Myers exhaled slowly. "I've seen enough." He looked directly at Karen. "Ms. Wilson, this is one of the most absurd abuses of authority I've seen in a long time. You are not law enforcement. You are not a social worker. You are simply a neighbor who overstepped in the worst possible way." Karen started to cry, not out of remorse, but out of humiliation. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. The judge cut her off. You meant every word and every action. You thought your HOA title gave you power. It didn't. He turned to the clerk. Record the following judgment. Defendant is guilty of harassment, filing a false report, and unlawful interference with custody. Sentence: 6 months of probation, mandatory community service, psychological evaluation, and a permanent restraining order against the Miller family. Karen's mouth fell open. A restraining order. That's my neighborhood. The judge didn't blink. Then I suggest you start looking for a new one. A few gasps rippled through the courtroom. Even her lawyer didn't argue. Sarah squeezed my hand, tears welling in her eyes, this time from relief. A few weeks later, Karen's house went up for sale. The once immaculate yard began to lose its perfect edges, her constant presence replaced by silence. The HOA quietly removed her from the board and issued a letter of apology to our family for any emotional distress caused by a misinterpretation of community authority. Sarah finally smiled again. She began taking Emma on daily walks through the neighborhood. No more looking over her shoulder, no more anxious glances toward Karen's house. The neighbors waved kindly now, many offering quiet words of support. One afternoon, as I watched them from the porch, Emma giggling in her stroller, I realized how peaceful everything had become. I'd dealt with countless criminals in my life, robbers, scammers, violent offenders, but this situation taught me something new. Danger doesn't always come with a weapon or a mask. Sometimes, it hides behind fake smiles, rules, and self-appointed authority. That night, after tucking Emma into her crib, Sarah leaned her head against my shoulder. You know, she said softly, I didn't think people like her could ever face real consequences. They always do, I said. Eventually, the truth catches up. It just takes someone willing to stand up to them. Sarah smiled. Well, I'm glad that someone was you. I chuckled quietly. No, it was us. You stood up to her first. You just didn't know your backup was wearing a badge. She laughed, and for the first time since moving in, the sound of our home was filled with nothing but warmth. No fear. No tension. Just peace. A month later, I received a letter from the new homeowners who bought Karen's house, a kind young couple expecting their first child. They thanked me for keeping the neighborhood safe and said they'd heard the whole story through the grapevine. Funny how things work out. The same street where our nightmare began was now the place our family finally felt at home. I glanced out the window one last time that evening. The sun dipping below the rooftops, the neighborhood bathed in gold. Emma babbled happily in Sarah's arms. Peace had finally returned. And as I watched them together, I silently promised that no one, not a neighbor, not an HOA board, not anyone, would ever threaten our family again. Because this time, the sheriff was home.